Llegó la primavera JCPenney con la última moda. Piezas cómodas y ligeras. Mezcla y combina lo nuevo de tus marcas favoritas y crea looks originales que se acomodan a tu presupuesto. Como las polos de St. John's Bay con un pantalón en algodón o un simple suéter y jeans de A&A. Encuentra el bolso de Liz Claiborne que siempre has querido y sandalias que combinen. Para noches más cálidas, elige pijamas ligeras y frescas de Ambriel. Trae a tu familia y descubran lo nuevo de primavera. JCPenney. Vale la pena.
Hello, word nerds. Welcome to the ad for my podcast called The Dictionary. My name is Spencer Parks. I host this podcast. I read the dictionary, the words, the definitions, etymologies, even more. I talk about it. I try to explain things. I also sometimes try to put in some silly jokes or silly sing-songy things. You know, it's just a fun way to read the dictionary. Sometimes I have guests on, and I hope that you will turn on this podcast, check it out, start from the beginning, and, enjoy this, what I like to call edutainment. Check it out in all the places that you can find podcasts.
Hello and welcome to How Did This Not Get Made?
This is the podcast all about the movies you never saw, the scripts that were never filmed, and the ideas that never even made it to the page. My name is David Spencer.
And my name is Daniel Kaka. Welcome back to part 2 of our Predators episode. If you missed part 1, we covered the history of the Predator franchise and how it got started. I would highly recommend listening if you would like to learn about how difficult it was to get the first movie off the ground. If you are simply here for the early draft of Robert Rodriguez's Predators, you are in the right place. Now, on with the episode. In 1994, the idea of a Predator sequel was still looming in the air. Around this time, an up-and-coming filmmaker, Robert Rodriguez, was making a name for himself in Hollywood. He was known as the 23-year-old kid that made an action-packed movie about a mariachi taking down a drug kingpin for only $7,000. The film El Mariachi amazed Sundance and was given national distribution.
And it didn't just amaze Sundance, it also amazed one Daniel Kaka.
It did, very much so. This is my favorite director of all time. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if we've talked about that as much on here, but I know we've talked about it in like Unclogged and stuff before, that Robert Rodriguez is like your favorite.
Yeah, unapologetically, I love Robert Rodriguez.
Absolutely.
So I was so excited to actually go through this script. For Rodriguez, he was embarrassed by the movie. This was his first film that he intended only to be sold in small video rental stores in Mexico. He never imagined for it to get national attention. Columbia Pictures gave him the opportunity to make a sequel to El Mariachi, which was Desperado. For Rodriguez, he saw the opportunity as a way to redo El Mariachi with a proper $7 million budget rather than just $7,000. While he was waiting to make Desperado, he had a few months in limbo waiting for the production to start. So he asked his agent if there was any writing gigs that he could pick up while he was waiting. His agent brought up the fact that 20th Century Fox was still looking for a Predator script, and he could work on that in the meantime. He took on the assignment. This is the story that we're going to cover in this episode.
Okay.
Now, you may be thinking to yourself, hey, didn't they make a Robert Rodriguez Predator movie that came out in 2010 and was written by Alex Litval, who wrote the spec script of the third Predator movie? And wasn't that movie directed by Nimrod Antal and just produced by Robert Rodriguez and even had Danny Trejo in it, which is Robert Rodriguez's go-to actor and second cousin?
Yes, I was thinking all of that.
And I would say you're right about all of those facts. But just like Lord of the Rings, Spider-Man, Batman, Superman, Jurassic Park 4, Almost Famous, RoboCop 2, Justice League, The Mask, Jaws 3, Wonder Woman, Dune, Godzilla, Haunted Mansion, and Scooby-Doo, just to name a few, this draft was vastly different from what we got, and we need to uncover the original story.
Yeah, okay.
Now, something to keep in mind while going through the script is that Robert Rodriguez never intended to make this movie himself, and he wrote it with no limitations, thinking that the studio would just take the script, take whatever they liked, and cut out whatever they couldn't, and just kind of use this as a launching point.
Originally, I was supposed to make this, I was supposed to just write it back in 95, 96. It was only a writing assignment. I was going to do Desperado as a directing gig, and I needed get some extra money, and I asked my agent, hey, I'm just sitting around for a few months. Is there a writing gig around town? And writing gigs are never good. Here, lame assignment. Oh, Fox has a Predator project over at Fox. And my eyes lit up because I loved the first Predator. So I thought, I'll do that. You go write something for Arnold. Okay, they're going to try to lure Arnold back to the Predator series because he wasn't a part of part 2. And they said he doesn't really want to do another Predator movie, but we think if he reads a script, that might be able to convince him, So let's just start with the script. And I talked with Arnold, and he was like, we have to go back to the jungle. None of that city stuff, So I thought, we can't really go back to the jungle, per se, without feeling repetitive. But if we go to another planet, and have a jungle setting on the other planet, then that'll satisfy both things of feeling like we're expanding the universe and getting Arnold back in the jungle. I wanted to get him back into a movie somehow. That was my job. So I wrote this script, and it was crazy. It was tons of, I think you read the original. There was tons of stuff going on. It was probably like a $200 million movie back then. But because I wasn't directing it, I didn't have to worry. I just wrote it as big as I want. I knew they'd figure it out and cut out what they didn't want.
I don't really know too much about Hollywood hiring dynamics, but it does kind of make sense that you're the really hot buzz out of Sundance and you're trying to get work just at least doing something and selling scripts just to keep some sort of an income while you're getting the next actual movie made. It makes sense that as that kind of person with a lot of buzz around you, you want to make stuff that is wild and impractical and try to sell scripts that are there more to continue the reputation than it is to make a movie.
Yeah, exactly. Now, before we get into the script of The Predators, why not take a listen to these ads?
Robert Rodriguez is trying to actually make movies, but it's hard to make a movie, and you got to keep income coming in somehow. If he could do it with podcast advertising on scripts that he was selling, maybe he would have.
Yeah. We're back.
I hope those advertisements inspired you to shop at your local grocery store.
Hopefully. All right, without further ado, this is Robert Rodriguez's Predators. In an aerial shot, we see a Galilean-style battleship, in which we see quite a bit of a battle, quickly moving as it's being chased in the ocean. The men aboard are wearing advanced armor and chainmail, armed with muskets and advanced weapons. They are fighting a losing battle against the, quote, Invisibles. Even the men who jump off the boat to escape the carnage are then surrounded by Invisibles that jump in after them. Their captain, dressed regally in purple and gold, is surrounded by Invisibles. One of the Invisibles enter the hull of the ship. In a standoff, the guard aims his musket at the Invisible, but soon we see the iconic triad of lasers pointed at his head, and he is killed. The Invisibles enter the room and find dead soldiers on the ground, and suddenly a large pirate sneaks up behind them and snaps its neck. He jumps into the storage room to arm himself. It's Dutch. He's older, weathered, long-haired, meaner, and has a series of numbers tattooed along the side of his face.
Okay, back up for a second because I'm trying to put this in a place in time because I don't remember if you said anything about a year or an era, but the way you were describing it sounded like, oh, this is not modern day. Maybe that was just in my head that it was like people on a boat with a captain.
It's kind of a old 18th century merchant ship with advanced weaponry. We're not supposed to necessarily know where or when this takes place.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, we've met Dutch. He's older. An Invisible blows a hole into the floor above Dutch and jumps through the hole and chases Dutch to the deck of the ship. Dutch surrenders when 3 laser dots appear on his forehead, and he's surrounded by a half dozen more Invisibles. The leader materializes and removes his helmet to reveal he's a human. This is Wilson. The others materialize and remove their helmets. They're all human. So, just to keep in mind, I'm going to throw out a lot of names. For the most part, a lot of these names, you just need to think henchman, most likely going to die.
Okay.
Okay. So don't get too attached to a lot of these guys. Just know Dutch and just know the commanders. These guys are Boole, Pines, and Vegas. The captain from earlier is dragged over to Wilson, where he's informed that he will be brought back to Earth, where he will be tried for harboring a fugitive and killing his men. But Wilson instead blasts his head off. The men capture Dutch and bring him to their fighter spaceship. As they take off, they drop 3 metal canisters on the Galilean ship, causing it to explode. Bursting through the fires is the main title, Predators. Have you ever seen the logo for Troublemaker Studios?
I feel like I must have, because I'm pretty sure that was on Predators.
Yeah, it's like there's this explosion and it goes...
Yes.
Yeah. This idea has been in the works for years for Rodriguez, and he finally made it happen with his actual logo for his studio.
Gotcha.
The fighter ship enters into the mothership in space. Dutch is escorted by Gonzalez, Molinet, Vegas, and Dake, and is led by Wilson. Dutch is silent, head still, but his eyes are darting around his surroundings, taking in as much information as possible. Signs, doors, the other soldiers like Rocco and Cadillac. Dutch is brought into the holding cell where he will wait for his teletribunal. Dutch knees and headbutts Wilson and takes off. They are about to shoot him, but then they remembered that they are on a spaceship. Do not shoot anything. Dutch runs through the ship, and with the Axis band that he stole from Wilson, he's able to enter through various chamber doors. He knocks out Rocker, and he does this all while still handcuffed. Dutch rolls under a closing gateway, Indiana Jones style, gets up and freezes when he feels the heat of 3 lasers on his temple. Cadillac has him pinned. With an electrogun, Cadillac stuns Dutch, bringing him to the ground. Cut to a shot of snakeskin cowboy boots walking down the hallway. This is Jake Carver. We're going to refer to him as JC from now on, who approaches Dutch. Dutch tries to take him out, but he is hit with an electrogun again, dissolved to Dutch's trial. Dutch stands in a shaft of light. He's shackled and surrounded by a highly charged electric ring. In the chamber, he's surrounded by various weapons, some from the past, some futuristic, some alien. In front of him is a wall of TV screens where various faces appear like a conference call. The main face is simply named the Superior, and he lists off Dutch's crimes, including desertion. They declare him guilty and escort him to his holding cell. Dak and Napper stand outside of Dutch's cell, smoking cigars. When Pines stops by to give him their food, Pines has his sleeves ripped off of his uniform, showing off his muscular arms and a Frazetta-esque, scantily clad woman wearing an Indian headdress with a long white snake draped around her neck tattoo, which Dak playfully asks Pines to have her dance. Another soldier walks by and tells them that they can't smoke, but they continue implying that this is their celebration because they're finally going home. JC is on a Zoom call. He's basically teleconferencing with someone, but JC's on a Zoom call with a high-ranking officer, Sadler. JC assumes that they are going back to Earth to deliver Dutch, but Sadler informs them that Dutch is going to Arcus 6 instead and warns the crew that they should suit up in full armor for this mission. They redirect the ship to Arcus 6. Back in the holding cell, Dr. Hardwick and her assistant Samson enter to inject Dutch with a serum that'll sedate him. Dutch wakes up 13 days later with a buzz cut. JC is in his cell, briefing him on the mission.
I am so just already lost and confused as to what is happening.
Dutch is around. He's deserted the planet, somehow has gotten off of Earth somehow. This crew has tracked him down, and they brought him onto the ship. They had a trial for him, and they're just like, you're guilty. And they're like, cool, we'll just send him back to Earth. And they're just like, hold on. He's not going back to Earth. Mm-hmm. He's going to Arcus 6 instead. And they're like, okay, that doesn't seem too hard. We'll just kind of drop him off there. He's like, but you have to wear all your armor. And they're like, that's a little weird. That we just have to like do a drop-off mission, and yet we have to be in full armor. Interesting. So that's where we are. So the crew is suiting up in Predator gear. Dak notices a red hickey on Wilson's neck and assume it's from Dr. Hardwick and him hooking up. Wilson stands on a bench and briefs the team, which is simply drop off Dutch at the assigned location and leave. Samson walks through the sickbay and catches Dr. Hardwick injecting his serum into her arm. When he asks, she says it's to prevent airborne venereal diseases. As they are landing, the team is given tracking rings that they wear on their fingers. Cadillac is late so that he can make a sandwich. While he holds a sandwich, a cockroach crawls out of the bread, and everyone's disgusted by it, and Cadillac actually pinches the cockroach and bites the head off of it. So basically, Cadillac is a badass and doesn't give a fuck. So, yeah.
I saw this thing. This blog had posted a thing about how ridiculous and not actually badass the line "I don't have time to bleed" is. That's so stupid. Like, how can you not have time to bleed? You can't stop that. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of the point. And then watching it in the context of the movie, it was so funny to see that "I don't have time to bleed." And what I didn't realize is the immediate next moment was the other guy being like, okay, and just immediately reacting like, all right, bro, you're going a little too hard there.
Yep.
It makes me like that moment so much that you have the badass, "I ain't got time to bleed," and the next person is like, all right, bro, chill out a little bit.
Sure.
You're hit. You're bleeding, man. I ain't got time to bleed. Oh. Okay.
So essentially that's what's going on. And everyone is looking at him. He's like, don't. So we get a good look at the planet Arcus 6, which the ship lands on. It's a big orange kind of jungle planet. Kind of looks like Jupiter from far away. They exit the ship. Parrish turns on the tracking monitor. We see everyone is a green dot, while Dutch is blue, because we have to notice a difference.
Because Dutch is an alien? I don't know what's happening.
I mean, he's an alien to this planet.
Who's the real predator?
So they notice the station that they landed at has been scorched and burned down. No signs of a contact person. Parrish informs them that there is a prison facility about 3.5 miles north of where they landed. So the team moves out. Along the way, they encounter a huge metallic totem pole covered in arcane hieroglyphics and icons. Dutch seems familiar with the markings, and Gonzalez guesses that this might be a warning. I have a guess that Gonzalez might be Danny Trejo.
Okay.
I mean, seeing that's the only henchman character with a Hispanic name, that's got to be him.
Yeah.
A chasm opens up beneath their feet. In Turkey, this is the actual name of another henchman. He falls. Dutch catches him, and the team still doesn't trust Dutch, and they aim their guns at him and yell to let him go. Dutch counters that. If he lets it go, Turkey's going to fall to his death. And Turkey is like, no, don't do that. Don't let me die. And sure enough, they just let him lift up Turkey. The team gathers, and they keep on moving. This is basically like the save the cat moment.
Yeah,
So, sure.
yeah.
It's important. Quoted straight from the script in the description lines, the men trek through the jungle. The camera glides above them, almost as if it's someone's floating POV looking down on their prey. Dutch is standing vigilant while Dak is not taking this seriously and lights up a cigar. We see the flame from the heat vision POV from above. They notice that this place is unusually quiet for what is described as a nature preservation. Dutch mentions that the trees are alive. Dak breaks off a branch from a tree to disprove Dutch. The tree begins to ooze bright green blood. Turns out it was a large camouflage insect, and Dak just broke off its arm. Parrish monitors lights up with multiple creatures around them. The team prepares for combat.
It sounds like this is setting up, this is where the cloaking technology comes from.
Yes, in a way. And you can kind of see from watching Predators, this moment is definitely copy and pasted into Predators. So this is more so when Predators began. And for this is maybe 15, 20 minutes into the movie. So Predators seems to have taken away a lot of filler and just you know what? We're going to start with Adrian Brody just falling through the air. Boom, he hits the ground. The movie starts.
Yeah.
Yeah. They notice the multiple creatures are around. They prepare for combat. Suddenly, a large rat emerges from the trees, zigzagging towards the crew. Napper stops Dak from shooting because the rat is not a threat. Because a larger creature is actually behind it, trying to chase it down. It has huge jaw, razor-sharp teeth, and it jumps through the air and has now redirected its attention towards Pine. Dak shoots the beast just before it is able to chomp down on his tattooed arm. Dr. Hardwick cuts open the animal with a laser pen to discover that it is a pregnant Pegasus.
What?
Yes, there are Pegasi on this jungle planet.
Sure. Okay.
The group regathers. They have a minor spat that leads them to all point their shoulder-mounted guns at each other, but everyone calms down eventually. Dutch looks up into the trees. Dak notices and asks what he's looking for, but Dutch stays quiet. Turkey doesn't trust Pines in reading the tracking device correctly, so they argue, and Pines ends up handing the device to Turkey. The crew hears a loud buzzing that seems to be getting closer. Vegas tells a story about a man named Bent Dick Sam whose dick got bitten by a mosquito. When the swelling went down, it had straightened out. That's not really relevant to the story, but it kind of gives a tone.
Sounds like Shane Black's character in the first one.
It is, yes. Yeah.
The other day, I was going down to my girlfriend. I said to her, "Jeez, you got a big pussy. Jeez, you got a big pussy." She said, "Why did you say that twice?" I said I didn't. See, it's because of the echo.
He shuts up when he sees a predator crucified on tree trunks in the shape of an X. Hardwick confesses that she's never seen this before and figures out that it's still alive. Again, we saw this in Predators as well, the crucified predator. Samson takes his gun and lifts the predator's head. It wakes. Samson grabs Dutch. Dutch freaks out and throws Samson at the predator. Instinctually, the predator sinks its teeth into Samson's neck. Blood squirts everywhere, and Samson drops to the ground. Samson, in revenge, shoots at Dutch as he's running away, grazing him at the top of his shoulder. JC stops Samson because they need him alive. JC finds Dutch's ankle monitor on the ground, and the team chase after Dutch. But with his ankle monitor gone and him wearing Predator gear, he's going to be pretty hard to find. Parrish plugs in the code for Dutch's metal armband, and we see a blue dot on the monitor. He's moving quickly towards the prison. Pines is commanded by JC to radio the prison. In his attempt, an ear-splitting shriek erupts in his headphones, causing him to go deaf and is bleeding out of his ears. Something is scrambling the frequencies. Pines is now relying on his basic tracking skills to find Dutch. Pines rushes ahead, thinking he's on Dutch's trail. He stops when he notices 3 lasers on his chest. Suddenly, 20 sets of lasers follows. He's surrounded by predators and they all shoot him. The crew hears his screams and they run to him. But when they get there, all they find is his arm with this fabulous tattoo sticking out of the ground. They're convinced that Dutch was the one who did this. Vegas prepares for the worst and, quote, pulls open his arm flaps and activates a row of automatic guns that are his right arm.
So, like a cyborg?
Basically, he's cyborg. The weapons begin self-activating, creating verses of tinkering and metal slapping together.
Okay.
Wilson then realizes that they are missing Molyneux. Then we cut to Molyneux, dead, surrounded by materializing predators, and one noticeably larger predator in all black armor, in the script known as Black Predator. The Black Predator rips out Molyneux's skull with his spine attached, which is a signature move for Predator, which I'm actually kind of glad that we saw this thing kind of this early in the script. I did notice that with a lot of the other Predator movies, it took a really long time for us to actually get to the Predator part. So this is like right away we get Predator action. Parrish looks down at the monitor and sees Dutch's blue light surrounded by red dots, and the blue light fades out. But the red dots are now heading towards the ship. Parrish warns JC that they need to get back to the ship before the Predators do. And all of a sudden, their tracking devices are drained of their energy. The clicking of multiple Predators are getting louder and more frequent, and they scatter. Napper is hit with a netball that pins him to a tree. The razor wire then tightens and cuts into his skin. Dak ducks the netball fired at him. The ball then activates and then spreads between 2 trees, causing Dak to run into the net, causing him to get wrapped up in it. JC, Wilson, and Parrish are also hit with the netballs and wrapped up. Gonzalez is running and makes the mistake of looking behind him and runs off of a cliff, but then falls safely into a mud pit. All that's left is Vegas and his arm gun. unleashing hell into the surroundings, causing some predators to take cover. The predators retaliate and shoot a series of hooks that attach to Vegas. The hooks are then strung up to a flying vehicle that takes Vegas and the others that have been captured away. A montage of about 50 plus predators screech in victory. In an aerial shot, we see the predators' campsite with huts, bonfires, octagonal cages, torture devices, and various arenas. JC wakes up in a cage without his armor, and next to him is Parrish's head on a spike. Around the camp, we see hides of various alien species and multiple unrecognizable weapons. The predators are skinning and gutting and draining the blood of the Pegasus in which they killed earlier. Samson is in the cage next to JC. His face is half eaten away from infection. We see the others in their cages: Dak, Bull, Napper, Vegas, Cadillac, Hardwick, Turkey, Vegas, and Wilson. I only say that just to give an idea of like how big this team is.
Yeah.
Don't worry about remembering their names. Samson notices that Gonzalez is gone. They're not the only species captured in the camp. There are other alien creatures. JC examines the cage, trying to find a way to escape, but also assumes that escaping is what they want. This is a game to them.
I kind of like the idea of saying other alien creatures that are being hunted as well.
Yeah. So we see Parrish's box. That's the monitor that they've been using to help navigate this place. Hardwick uses her laser pen that she's been hiding to cut through the cage, while a fight between two cockroach men and a predator are happening. So that's kind of what's distracting all the predators, is like these fun little fights to the death that they're having. The graphic battle ends, leaving one cockroach man feeding off the dead predator and the other cockroach man. As Hardwick cuts through the cage, the team argues over if they should go back to the ship or the prison. They conclude that the prison is the best idea, since they might have supplies and maybe some survivors might be there as well, as the ship might be crawling with predators by now. Suddenly, Rocco pipes up and states that it's weird that these guys could set up a camp, and yet the internal command had no idea about this. The lifeless Pines is being dragged into the camp by the Black Predator. Pines is left by the tree trunk. Then we can clearly see that his arms have been severed off, and cuts have been sealed with a fluorescent green jelly. Dak yells at Pines to get up. Now, Pines is actually still alive. He's a bit woozy, but ultimately he's just given up. Dak seems to be getting more erratic. Hardwick finally cuts through the cage. Dak asks for the laser, but she instead tosses it to Samson. Just as Samson catches the pen, a predator shoulder-mounted gun blasts his hand and turns it into ground meat. Hardwick makes a break for it and grabs Parrish's monitor. A predator shoots at Hardwick, but ends up lighting up Samson instead. Cadillac holds Samson together, but is dragged out of the cage by a predator. Hardwick is running through the jungle. She gets the box to work, and she knows what direction the prison is, and she starts going there. Trailing behind her is the Black Predator, exploding trees, trying to find her. From the Predator's POV, we see her heat signature running through the jungle. Cadillac, on the other hand, has been dragged into a small arena where he will have to fight the cockroach man that won the previous fight. The Predator gives him a spear to fight. Cadillac is amazed with how lightweight and sharp it is. He actually tests the weapon on a stone and easily cuts it in half. In the two fight, Cadillac ends up winning the fight by slicing the creature, quote, from nuts to neck. He and the Predators cheer. So yeah, this is kind of like a training ground. This is kind of like them having fun with battles to the death.
Yeah.
Hardwick is still running through the jungle as the Black Predator leaps from tree to tree, catching up to her. She hears the clicking getting closer. Suddenly, she runs into Gonzalez, who is covered in mud, not realizing that the mud hides his heat, and that's what's keeping him alive. She is about to scream when a mud-covered hand covers her mouth, and she's pulled into a mud pit. It's Dutch. He is also covered in mud, and he is here to save her. The Black Predator plummets to the ground, and Gonzalez makes a run for it. Black Predator throws a boomerang and severs Gonzalez's leg. Gonzalez is harpooned by the Predator, and both rappel up to the top of the trees. The Black Predator looks down for the others, but they can't be found. The Predator takes Gonzalez back to the camp. Hardwick and Dutch quickly get out of the mud to avoid being bitten by the eel-like lampreys. After asking why Dutch saved Hardwick, he explains that he needs someone to help man the ship. So this is completely selfish as to why he saved her.
Yeah.
Back at the camp, Cadillac is dropped into the cage. Rocco finds 3 dog tags in the dirt. This is not the first humans who have been here. Gonzalez is brought back to the camp. He is fitted with a metal leg. They strap him down and inject a green alien juice into his jugular. Gonzalez starts to pulsate and goes mad. He attacks a nearby predator and rips out its heart. He then targets Pines. The armless Pines stands up and starts running, but it's no use. Gonzalez rips him apart, using his prosthetic leg to repeatedly stab him and then tosses him into the trees. 6 predators are now chasing down Gonzalez like it's a sport. They all shoot various weapons at him, and then he's finally taken out by a spike ball, which is sent by a slingshot, and it hits the back of his head. The predator rips the skull and spine out of Gonzalez, and the remainder of his flesh dissolves from the green goo. Pines is still alive, and he's put into a guillotine, one of those that seems like it's imported from France. A predator raises the blade and decapitates Pines. His head and then goes into a pile of other various alien species heads. The team put 2 and 2 together, figuring out the predators have been on Earth for many years and that they have been exchanging technology and people for a long time now. The reason why they are there is because there's a rat amongst them that traded this crew for more predator technology and weapons. Everyone is suspicious of each other. Wilson nervously scratches what looks like a red hickey on his neck. The others notice and instantly become suspicious of Wilson. The predators start opening more cages, one with an alien and the other bull and nappers. The 2 start running. The 2 younger predators are given a mysterious drink and are sent out after the escapees, like it was their training. Bull and Napper separate at a fork in the path, and the 2 predators split off as well. Napper takes refuge in the base of a tree, but Bull leaps into the air and grabs onto a vine, which turns out to be a large snake. The snake sinks its fangs into Bull, and he drops to the ground. The predator approaches Bull's body and rips out his skull and spine. The other predator sends out a homing missile to find Napper. The missile finds him, and Napper takes off. He ducks out of the way, and the missile soars past him. The missile then takes a U-turn, and as Napper hides behind a tree, the missile rips through the tree and chops Napper in half. So like I said before, don't have to memorize a lot of these names. They're getting picked off like flies.
Oh, yeah.
Hardwick and Dutch are still traveling through the jungle and spot the black predator. When they see it, it appears to be looking right at them, but it is instead looking at the large bug camouflaged as a tree behind them. The large predator shoots the bug into pieces, guts spilling all over Dutch and Hardwick. Dutch goes in the direction of the ship. Hardwick, knowing that they're close to the prison, reluctantly follows him. Dutch and Hardwick arrive at the landing site, and the ship is gone. Hardwick suggests going back to the prison, which was JC's orders, but Dutch is hesitant. He doesn't trust JC, so he suggests going back to the camp instead. Back at the camp, Dak spots a wild Pegasus and lures it close. He flicks a cigar butt at its head, and in retaliation, it spits its acidic saliva at them. But more importantly, the cages. The acid hits the bars in Dak's face, burning his eyes. The Pegasus runs away. The other predators are too distracted by the fights to investigate what's going on, but Dak and Turkey manage to escape. JC orders them to go to the prison and leave them behind. Turkey has to lead Dak now that he's blind. Turkey trips into a puddle of mud, and Dak is yelling back at him. The black predator materializes and sends his Wolverine-type spikes into Dak's neck and rips off his skull. Turkey runs into the jungle. He trips and hits the ground hard. Dr. Hardwick notices Turkey, and she and Dutch make their way to him. Turkey then joins them, and now they go back to the camp. Someone there knows where the ship is, and Hardwick brings up the fact that Wilson might know where it is. Back at the camp, Wilson is dragged out of his cage and set up in the guillotine, all while screaming, "Not me." Seems a bit suspicious. The blade is let go by a young predator, but the rope is caught by an older predator so that the young predator can try again because he messed up the first time. The blade drops short of Wilson's neck. They set up the blade again, and Wilson screams. Dutch, Hardwick, and Turkey are posted outside the camp. They see all the cages filled with different alien species. Dutch decides that they should open up all the cages. The young predator is now about to drop the blade again, and suddenly his head explodes. Dutch, Hardwick, and Turkey are blasting their way through the camp with weapons that they found lying around. The older predator is shot in the chest and lands on top of Wilson. Dutch shoots the head restraint, releasing Wilson as the dying predator lets go of the rope. Wilson frees himself, narrowly missing the blade that chops off the predator's head. Turkey finds a wrist dial from a predator and uses it to unlock the cages, while Dutch just simply shoots the hinges. They free the other aliens, and they cause havoc fighting the predators. This is a quote from the script. It says, "This is the closest we'll see to an Alien versus Predators movie." Dutch, Turkey, Wilson, Cadillac, Vegas, and JC, if you've been keeping their score, are still alive, and they run into the jungle.
Yes.
Hardwick is still in the camp trying to free Rocco from his cage. Hardwick and Rocco are snagged before they could escape and are thrown into the arena, given weapons, and are forced to battle. They hesitate at first, but wound each other enough to keep the crowd happy. Rocco insists that Dr. Hardwick kill him, but she doesn't want to. But with some clever maneuvering, he gets her to slice his throat with the spear, and he drops to the ground. A random predator drops into the arena to fight Hardwick. She manages to spear the predator's midsection and fool its shoulder gun to shoot its own head off. After defeating that predator, 10 more predators jump into the arena. In the jungle, 5 predators, led by the black predator, ride cycle sleds, which is basically just hover motorcycles. Dutch gets everyone into a muddy ditch just as the predators pass over them on their hover vehicles. Vegas runs up ahead, but is now pursued by the cycle sleds. They shoot at him and miss, but one laser hits a tree, knocking it over, knocking Vegas into the mud. The predators get off the cycle sleds to find him, but they can't register his body heat anywhere. They lose interest and search for the others. The coast is clear, and the group gets a chance to breathe. JC asks why Dutch came back to them, and he explains that the ship is gone, and someone here knows what's going on. Again, completely selfish.
Yeah.
Wilson continues to scratch his neck. They all head towards the prison. The group makes it to the prison, but it's heavily guarded by fully trained predators, who are bigger and have more advanced weapons than those at the camp. There are cycle sleds lined up and ready to go. Cadillac is itching to get on one of those cycle sleds. When a predator steps off and leaves one idle, Cadillac gets his chance and runs for one without warning anyone. He basically Leroy Jenkins and grabs one of the cycle sleds, and he rides the vehicle and basically causing a distraction so that everyone else gets a chance to get into the prison. Dutch, Turkey, Wilson, Vegas, and JC enter the hall of the prison. As they walk through the prison, they see decaying bodies and skeletons shackled to the wall. Suddenly, a wall at the end of the hall opens, and out walks predators. Now, these are different. They look like military officers, and not fighters like they typically encounter. Within the group, Dutch spots a human, a military officer. This is Sadler. Sadler, if you remember, was on the Zoom call with JC. Sadler was the one commanding him. He's like, hey, don't go to Earth. You got to go to this planet. And said, that's this guy.
Okay.
He is in a meeting with the other predators. And he is wearing a glowing bolt device in his neck. It's in the same spot where Wilson has been scratching at that red spot on his neck as well. The door is about to close, but JC runs and places his boot in the doorway to prevent it from shutting so they can get in. They entered a burnt-out prison hallway. The hallway opens up into an underground hangar filled with predators and other spaceships. There in the middle is the ship that they came in with humans loading up the ship with predator equipment. The humans are prisoners, and upon closer inspection, their eyes are lifeless, and their bodies seem to be modified like they're Frankensteined with alien parts. A triad of red dots can be felt on Turkey's face, and they all clear the space before the place is engulfed in a fireball. When the smoke clears, a group of predators appear before the team. JC and Dutch run down the hallway, running past cells of human prisoners being spliced with different alien species. The wall by them is blown apart, separating JC and Dutch. Out of the blast hole is a stream of predators that pursue and shoot at them. JC and Dutch enter the second tier of the prison block. It is a round octagonal, and it is lit by a single skylight above them. JC is grabbed by a predator and is repelled into the sky. Dutch shoots the predator's arm off, releasing JC to the ground. They run through the hallways to lose the predators. Vegas breaks his ankle while running on a piece of concrete that collapses underneath his feet. Turkey and Wilson run away as Vegas gets ripped apart. Dutch and JC find themselves at a dead end with a large gate and a keypad. Dutch kicks the keypad and the gate opens. Now, not because he kicked the keypad, but on the other side was a predator who was actually properly opening the gate. The two double team that predator and take him out. They drag the unconscious predator into the room that it came from. It's an armory. Jackpot. They stock up on a bunch of weapons. A humanoid creature enters the room to drop off a box. The eyes of this person are blacked out holes and appears to be blind. And when the creature leaves, they follow it. The door opens, they find Sadler, who says, "Good to see you again, Commander. I see Dutch hasn't given you any problems."
We're getting these Frankenstein people. It feels like there's too much world building, if that makes sense to me.
It's a lot happening at once.
There's a lot, because like Predators gives a little bit more world building. We're on a different planet. We've got a little bit more of like, this is a game preservation essentially, but it's not too much. And this feels like expanding the universe way too much to the point where it's like, I can't even keep track of what's happening right now.
Yeah. Basically, you just have to remember, it's down to like JC and Dutch. Mm-hmm. They're being chased by the Predators. They've been found out, and they get to the point where they come face to face with Sadler himself, the guy who has been conspiring with the Predators. Mm-hmm. Sadler is surrounded by doctors in white coats, all of them working on experiments. Dutch blasts the heads of several humanoids and aims his shoulder gun at Sadler. Sadler explains that this is all part of the plan. He trades a few soldiers' lives in exchange for advanced alien technology, which in the greater picture saves the lives of millions. This is all to ensure that the human race has a fighting chance amongst the other species in the universe. If it wasn't for these trades, Earth would have been eliminated entirely. The reason why Dutch was brought on this planet is because he killed one of the Predators back on Earth. And this guy was just a scout, nothing like the Predator captains that are far superior. So this kind of diminishes the Predator that Dutch killed on Earth, because like he wasn't even made to kill people. He was just made to be like, is this planet safe, or does it have like a species that we can like farm from?
I kind of like the idea that it's like, that Predator that was so scary, yeah, that's not even one of the real rough ones. That's level 1.
That's not even our final form. Now, this room is then filled with even more Predators. Their lasers are aimed at Dutch and JC. I did pull this dialogue from the script from Sadler. Men have died for the country throughout history. This is history, right here, right now, and you can't stop history any more than you can change it. And Dutch says, wrong, your history.
All right, okay, sure, why not?
Dutch shoots a container of flammable chemicals. It blasts JC and Sadler off their feet. The Predators shoot up the place. Dutch and JC drop down a industrial chute which leads them to the hangar. Several Predators follow them. Dutch and JC shoulder-mounted guns shoot behind them as they run through the hangar and escape out of the prison. They've made it out. Outside the prison, they spot Turkey and Wilson being escorted by Predators. JC and Dutch shoot them down, and they all get on cycle sleds and take off into the jungle. The Predators get on cycle sleds and chase after them. Wilson hangs on the back of the cycle sled that Turkey drives. So Turkey and Wilson are together on one cycle sled. Turkey scrapes a tree and sends Wilson flying off. He tries to go back to him, but he decides not to when a swarm of Predators surround Wilson. JC slows down and allows a Predator to catch up to him. The Predator jumps from his cycle sled and he speeds up, and he runs the vehicle into a large tree. Now JC, he has jumped off the cycle sled into safety while both the cycle sled and the Predator slam into a tree and it explodes. Dutch maneuvers the sled so that he positions himself to have a head-on collision with a Predator. Again, as they're coming to each other, Dutch jumps off his cycle sled. The two cycle sleds slam into each other, killing one of the Predators. Another predator then blasts through that explosion. JC then shoots and kills it. Dutch and JC find a stray sled and they take off. Turkey is wandering in the jungle. He sees a billow of smoke in the distance and walks towards it. It's a fire. It's Cadillac, who's roasting parts of a hacked up predator and he's eating it. Turkey hesitates at first and then just joins him and they both feast on the predator. Turkey lets out a burp and is caught off guard when he hears a click behind him. They're being watched by dozens of predators and they're both shot to bits. Don't get too close to all these characters.
Well, I mean, it's a Predator movie. Like, everybody's going to die except for like one or two.
All you need to know is Dutch and JC. That's really about it. And maybe Sadler. Dutch and JC make their way to the crucified predator that we saw earlier, and Dutch decides to cut it down. He figures that this predator has something against the other predators and would be willing to help them out. Dutch uses the blood from the dead Pegasus to heal its wounds. The renegade, in the script, the crucified predator is then just called the renegade predator, or just the renegade. The renegade grabs Dutch's throat and lets go. They all get on one cycle sled and they take off. The renegade leads them to the fleet of predator ships. Behind them is an army of predators on cycle sleds that are chasing after them. The renegade steers into the jungle hoping to lose them. Now this renegade actually knows how to use the cycle sled, so like he's going much faster, maneuvering much better than JC or Dutch ever did. The sled then catches fire. They all jump off of the sled, hits a tree and explodes. And now they are completely surrounded by predators. The predators, they've captured Wilson, and they actually brought him back to their base. He's been fitted with metal claws. The black predator enters the corral, and Wilson and this black predator are about to fight each other, and they battle. Wilson is then feeling the effects of the serum that they gave him, and he's starting to feel stronger. Black Predator then slices Wilson's midsection, and he begins to bleed. The match is suddenly halted.
But he doesn't have time to bleed.
No.
Sorry.
Yeah. The match is suddenly halted when the King Predator arrives.
King Predator.
So you were saying about world building, and I was like, it just keeps getting bigger.
I like you trying to bring in a couple of new ideas, but this is getting too much, guys. Leave some for the rest of the franchise to try to add into it.
Yeah. King Predator has arrived, and he's carried on a throne made of skulls.
Also, the idea of King Predator is silly to me, and being carried in on a throne of skulls. Come on, this is a lot.
This is amazing. Now there are hundreds of predators in the crowd watching this fight. Now the tribute ritual has begun. Young predators bring skulls to the king, and in exchange, they are knighted. When the predator presents the king with a small head, possibly the head of a child, that predator is beheaded. He is not worthy of being a true predator. A shackled JC and Dutch enter the arena. JC takes off his restraints and apologizes to Dutch. The bolt in his neck starts to light up, and now he can speak in clicks, and he speaks directly to the king. So that's what that device was there for, so that he could speak to the predators. Dutch has been stabbed in the back. Dutch lunges to attack JC, but he's held back by the other predators. Dutch is JC's offering to the king. After that, he can go home. The king tosses spears at both JC and Dutch. JC is confused, but they have to fight. JC loses his spear in the battle, and Dutch abandons his so they can fight hand to hand. The crowd clicks wildly. JC goes back to his spear and charges, but Dutch is quick and throws his spear into JC's head. JC is dead. Dutch rips the bolt out of JC's neck and uses it to speak to the king. We don't know what he said, but the king is not happy about it. The crowd clicks in disapproval, but it all stops when shots rip through the nosebleed section of the stands. It's the renegade predator. He's hijacked an airship and is firing aimlessly into the crowd. It's a fucking massacre. Dutch runs towards the ship, and the king jumps down and chases after him. Dutch uses a catapult to jump high enough and land into the cargo door of the airship. The king jumps and grabs Dutch's ankle, dangling from the ship. Dutch grabs the predator weapon and aims it at the king's head and says, farewell to the king, and fires. The king drops to the ground. Wilson appears, still alive, with the head of the black predator. He's hoping to catch a ride, but Dutch leaves him behind. Wilson is then torn apart by the other predators. Dutch makes his way into the cockpit with the Renegade, and they both take off into the sky. With the bolt, Dutch can now speak to the Predator. The Predator punches in coordinates, and the screen displays the planet Earth, and they both take off into the blackness of space. The end. That is Predators.
Okay. That was a lot.
It's a lot. And it's kind of understandable why everyone's like, we're not making this movie.
Yeah.
But it is also understandable that he's like, hey, I'm going to give you all of my ideas. And you just kind of like pick and choose the ones that are feasible. Also, this is 1994.
Yeah.
Like, so much of the stuff would not even be possible. Now, we know that this film did not get made. And from what we experienced, I mean, we can see why. Part of what Rodriguez was trying to accomplish was actually getting Arnold Schwarzenegger back on board. He even consulted with him as to how he should approach the story, and Arnold responded with something along the lines of, we have to go back to the jungle, none of the city shit. And another casting Rodriguez was hoping for was the original Predator, Jean-Claude Van Damme. Yeah, it was a claim that he made at the 2010 South by Southwest Film Festival. My guess is that his role would have gone to J.C. Jean-Claude.
I see what you're doing there.
After Rodriguez's draft, Fox seemed to have given up on the franchise. We wouldn't see another Predator on the silver screen until 2004 in the ultimate clash, Aliens vs. Predator. We mentioned earlier that Peter Briggs pitched the idea of Aliens vs. Predators back in the 90s. The real reason why Fox didn't go forward with that idea is because they were actually developing Alien Resurrection, and they didn't want any conflict with that film.
Yep, makes sense.
Although the idea of Aliens vs. Predators did spawn in multiple video games. So Jordan released the game Aliens vs. Predators for the SNES in 1993.
Oh, wow.
Alien vs. Predator, the last of his clan, was released on the Game Boy in the same year. But the most memorable was Capcom's 1994 arcade game, Aliens vs. Predators. In the early 2000s, Paul W.S. Anderson pitched the Aliens vs. Predators ideas that he's been working on for 8 years. Anderson drew most of his inspiration from the trilogy of Alien vs. Predator novels, known as the Mochiko Noguchi saga, which was based on the Aliens vs. Predators comic book series. Producer John Davis was impressed with the pitch and secured the rights to make the film. Now, this would lead to the sequel, Aliens vs. Predators Requiem. While working on Requiem, visual effects consultant Liam McDonnell began working on a treatment for a third AVP. He unveiled his story for the website AVP Galaxy. It takes place on Earth, far into the future, and ravaged by climate change. Mankind has reverse engineered advanced interstellar technology from plasma technology recovered from Predator weapons. The fuel needed for this tech is a rare mineral that can only be found in southern Africa, which is owned by the Weyland-Yutani Corporation. Global warming would free the xenomorph queen from the first AVP from her icy tomb. The reason why this didn't happen, ironically, is that after revealing the Predator's home planet, any assumption of a new AVP would take place anywhere but Earth. The other more practical reason is that AVP Requiem underperformed in the box office and the demand for a sequel just wasn't there. In early 2009, executive Alex Young at Fox contracted Robert Rodriguez in hopes to reinvent the franchise and to distance themselves from AVP. They were going to use Rodriguez's old script as a jumping point to create the story. They hired then Michael Finch and Alex Litvak to help write the draft for the script. For Litvak, we mentioned his first script that he sent to Fox back in the 90s, but in 2008, he actually came up with a new pitch for a Predator movie that got some people interested. Like, it kept his name on file so that when they were going to make the Rodriguez Predator script, they're like, hey, you know Predator. Look at this crazy script, make something practical out of it. So he helped make a lot of that.
Yeah. It's so interesting that, like, Rodriguez is still attached to a Predator sequel for like 20 years, basically, until we get Predators.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Something about Rodriguez, either his script or it also could just be like him as a person, was something that they were like, okay, we want to do something with this or something with this creative person. Not specifically this, but we're going to keep it on file. And whenever we want to come back to the idea of doing another Predator movie, we're going to kind of use this as a starting point.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Robert Rodriguez was not able to direct, but he still wanted to get involved. So he wanted the movie made entirely by Troublemaker Studios, and he wanted to use his own crew. He wanted to film it all in Austin, Texas. And I think there was another remote location where they went to South America, and he wanted the creative freedom. Robert Rodriguez chose Nimrod Antal to direct. He knew that he was a great choice because of his previous work on Cantrell and Armored. Rodriguez mentioned that he proved himself as a resourceful and original filmmaker, and Antal reminded him a lot of Quentin Tarantino, especially when it came to directing his actors. So we're going to move on from Predators after this, but we're going to talk just briefly about Predators because this is the first time that you watched Predators yesterday, and I just kind of want to get your hot take on it. What did you think about it?
Predators was definitely, of the three, that I had like the strongest reaction to and opinions on, and not necessarily in a positive way. There's so many choices in that movie that didn't feel great and felt extremely of its time in embarrassing degree. So one thing right off the bat, Adrian Brody feels completely wildly miscast to me.
There is a bit of an explanation for that. I believe that the director, Antal, he worked with him before, so like he felt comfortable with him. And Rod Rodriguez is kind of known for doing this, where he's like, he kind of approaches the actors and is like, in your wildest dreams, what's a character you want to play? And that's kind of what's going on here. And then on top of that, they were trying to think of Schwarzenegger's character, and they took that character and they're like, okay, well, we can't get him. And what if we just like took his character and like split it off into like 7 different characters? And that's kind of what this is.
Yeah, you can definitely feel that sense.
But they specifically did not want to get like a big beefy guy. Like there's a moment in there where like he takes off his shirt, he's covered in mud, very much like Schwarzenegger. And you're just like, this is just a scrawny guy just covered in mud. But you can't repeat what you did before. To be fair to Adrian Brody, he was cast like 2 weeks before they started shooting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so he had little to no time to prepare for this.
Probably the key thing that made me be like, what are you doing in this movie, was that voice he is using. He's trying to do this like gravelly, badass soldier.
What about you?
What about me?
It just did not work for me at all. The whole movie feels so 2010 edgy in so many of the types of characters. Probably my favorite actor in the movie was Topher Grace, and I kind of liked what he was doing, and I thought he was having fun with it.
He's like, I'm a doctor, and everyone's like, oh, cool, that's the guy that's going to help us. No.
Yeah, spoilers for the end of the movie when he has his weird serial killer turn or whatever. That was a thing that I was like, okay, performance-wise, this is working for me, but from an aspect of like, again, edgy 2000s movie, I'm like, really, guys? And his whole speech he does while what's-her-face is like cut on the neck. Whatever is happening there, you guys need to calm down.
There's this really funny moment in the behind the scenes with Topher Grace. He is coming out of the water and like he's completely drenched. He seems exhausted, and he turns to the behind the scenes camera. He's like, I worked on that 70s show. This is basically the same.
In the last act of that movie with like all the Topher Grace stuff, it really feels like somebody was saying, but who's the real predators? Yep. And just some executive had that phrase just like taped to every script as the idea that everyone was going with.
Yeah, it definitely felt like a producer note.
It still had a lot of good stuff. The thing that stuck with me the most that I really liked was the Danny Trejo's dead body with like the voice saying, help me. That was a really cool scene.
I was like, oh man, that's such a great trap.
Help.
Yeah, and they finally got Danny Trejo in a Predator movie.
Yeah.
Now, you may have noticed at the end of the movie, it kind of set itself up for a sequel. You had Adrian Brody and the sniper character. Both of them are looking up at the sky, and then all of a sudden you see like more parachutes coming to the ground. Now, there was a plan to make a sequel for this movie.
Predators.
Yeah. Well, it was just going to be Predators 2. This was mostly coming from Alex Litvak. Alex Litvak, if you listen to interviews of him, it seems like his whole career has been gunning to making Predator movies and just making more Predator movies. And like he got his chance to do so and he did a pretty decent job. But like after this, he's like, we can make a sequel and I know exactly what to do. So he kept on pushing this idea and he actually pitched this idea. He called it Die Hard on a Predator ship.
Okay.
Where the two survivors, they are captured by predators. They are brought onto a ship and then they have to fight to hijack the ship. And then that would bring them back to Earth. Mm-hmm. And that's the whole sequel.
I could see it.
Yeah. But then years later, we got Prey, which honestly is a brilliant Predator movie.
Oh, yeah. Even though it's not necessarily my genre, but I can't deny that it is extremely well made, extremely well crafted, both from a big picture perspective. I think the main character has a line, or somebody has a line about her that's like, I'm not a threat and that's what makes me dangerous. The idea of just like, hey, underestimating somebody who is actually extremely competent and her skills come from her intelligence and ingenuity and not from being big muscly. And that's what makes for a new type of story in this universe. But also from like a scene-to-scene construction, cinematography angle, you can tell that there is a lot of care in every moment, every shot. It's really one of those movies that you can tell that it was created by people who really want to make something good, you know?
Yeah. Incredibly well crafted. I forget the main character's name, but like the hatchet and like throwing it at the tree and then using the rope to like spring it back and just going back and forth, and just how utilized that is in the movie, where it's like it's primitive but it's innovative and it's smart.
Exactly.
It definitely like brings it back to the roots of Predator and it understands the assignment. You don't need Arnold Schwarzenegger. You need the Predator, and you just need to plop the Predator where you think is interesting. So Predators versus Pirates.
Yeah.
Amazing. We need that movie.
Two things that the director wanted, but the studio said no to, that I wish were things that happened, which, number one, he wanted the entire movie to be in Comanche language instead of them speaking English and just like saying a couple of Comanche words and phrases every now and then.
On Hulu, there is an option to have that dubbed.
Oh, okay. One thing I noticed, I was watching it on Hulu because I usually watch with subtitles on. The subtitles do a thing that not enough subtitles do, and I saw it and I was like, yes, I'm so thankful that you guys did this, which is that when somebody was speaking Comanche, and it was never translated in subtitles like in the movie, when somebody was speaking in Comanche, it was the actual words written out on the screen, because most of the time subtitles would just say in parentheses speaking in another language.
Yeah.
And this was actually like you did the work to put the actual words in there, and especially when there is language on the screen that is not meant to be translated to English, still write out the actual words themselves, the actual Comanche words or the actual French words, instead of just saying speaking another language. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think I said this yet, but the other thing that Dan Trachtenberg wanted to do that the studio said no to was to have the marketing not mention the Predator at all and have it not be marketed as a Predator movie, and have that be a surprise while watching the movie to be like, oh, wait a minute, that's what this movie is? This is a Predator movie? Surprise, this was part of another franchise this whole time, which also would have been very cool. I understand why that wasn't done, because that is hard to market, but it would have been cool.
When the movie came out, it was one of those word of mouth movies, because this came out during the lockdown. All of a sudden, it was just kind of dropped on us. They're like, hey, everyone, new Predator movie on Hulu. And once it dropped, like everyone was like, this is incredible. And it became, I think, the most watched title on Hulu up to that date.
Definitely worth watching.
Definitely. There is an honorable mention of an unmade Predator movie. I only say that just because he made a pitch to Fox and they were like, that seems like a good idea, but no. Now, this comes from the director, Vincino Natali. He was the director of Cube and Splice. Now, in 2015, he tweeted out ideas and concept art, which was by Amro Atia and Dan Billingen, that showed the Predator reboot that he would want to do. And then he tweeted the log line, Predators hunt humans, on their planet. And apparently he pitched this idea, but like nothing came to it. But like he made a big deal about it on Twitter, and he talked to, there's like an official Predator podcast as well. And he's like, these are all of my ideas to make a Predator movie. It didn't seem like Fox was even involved in this. And around 2015, I believe Fox was preparing for the buyout from Disney.
Yeah.
So I think they were just like, we can't really commit to anything right now. So I think that's what was going on. Now, the last thing that I want to do, we mentioned kind of briefly Predator in comic book form. And I didn't really want to go into the history of it just because I feel like it didn't contribute enough to the unmade movies or the unmade Predator films, nor really the history of Predator, but it is a significant part of Predator, much like The Mask, much like RoboCop. Like, these characters really thrive in the comics, and that's where they really live. But I wanted to just kind of go down a list of every character that the Predator has versed against.
Okay.
Obviously, we had Aliens versus Predator. We also had Aliens versus Predator versus the Terminator. Predator versus the Justice League of America. This is the weirdest one. Predator versus Archie.
Okay.
As in Archie Comics. Predator versus Judge Dredd. Predator versus Judge Dredd versus Aliens. Predator versus Batman. Predator versus Tarzan. Predator versus Superman. Superman and Batman versus Aliens and Predator.
Awesome.
Amazing. I absolutely adore this franchise.
No, that's great. That's awesome.
But yeah, that's Rob Rodriguez's Predators.
Yeah, very cool. All right. Well, thank you everybody so much for listening. If you want to find more about this podcast, you can go check out our website, pipedreampodcasts.com. While you're there, you can check out some of our other shows, such as Pod Made You Special, Escape from Vault Disney, Mystery Shack Look Back, Come On Fahuwa Pods. You can also find links to our social media pages. We are on Twitter at HDTNGM. We're on Instagram at How Did This Not Get Made? And you can send us your emails, notgetmade@gmail.com. Send us your suggestions for future movies. Send us your corrections or thoughts. Tell us that you think we're cool and fun.
Tell us what character you want to see the Predator go after next.
Yeah, yeah. Predator versus Jedi.
Ooh.
You can also find our Patreon page to support us on Patreon, supporting this show and some of our other shows such as Pod Made You Special. We are really thankful for all of the support. You can find lots of fun perks there, including special bonus audio, notes, lots of other cool things. That's going to go ahead and wrap us up. Thank you everybody so much for listening.
Thank you.
I ain't got time to podcast.
You're one ugly motherfucker.